It shocked and terrified a lot of people. I was curious to see just how similar this film was to real life. He shot 24 people, killing 12 of them. It ended up being eerily similar. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you all here for the Season 3 premiere of Live Life for the Stories. And we got some stories. So, let's get right into it. What if a film inspired by your own life ended up predicting your future? Learn how I got to have a voiceover role in a film that seemed to draw inspiration from the future just as much as the past. Lesson 1. Life imitates art more than we expect, both in the past and the future. So, we'd finished our first European unit of photography on Carpe Diem, and like you remember from the end of Season 2, I flew home on July 19th, 2012, which was right at the end of the HARA Motion Picture Conservatory's summer production days. And there was a returning HARA student and enthusiastic filmmaker named Narain, and he invited me to the set of the film he was directing called One Last Dance. Samir is actually still making content to this day, so check out the link to his Substack in the description of this video. I think that's where he's posting most of his content nowadays. Anyway, I showed up at CSUMB on July 20th for one of the last scenes Samir needed to shoot. It was a classroom scene, and it meant a lot to me to be surrounded by old friends and classmates on the final day of production for the HARA summer season, since I've been gone for all the rest of it. Now, at the time, this movie felt like fiction, but what happened in real life later on made the film feel almost prophetic. I sat in as a student in the classroom for that scene, and after the day was over, Michael Buffo offered to hire me as a teacher's assistant to help teach the student directors how to edit their films. And he offered to give me a 1 terabyte external hard drive, the first I'd ever had, in exchange for the work. And I knew that I would need a big hard drive for the 300 gigabytes of footage from Carpe Diem. Well, a big hard drive at the time. I know nowadays they're a lot bigger than that. But for me, in 2012, that was huge. So I took the job. But before I get to that, I was connected to Samir's film in a number of ways. Andrea Altomare was the male lead, who I'd grown up with since elementary school. And the female lead was Megan Joplin, a friend from high school that you'll recognize from Season 1, Episode 9, and Season 2, Episode 1. And Samir and I had been friends since he started taking classes at HARA, I think about 2 seasons prior. And he'd shown me how passionate he was about filmmaking. So I was happy to be there among friends 2 days after getting back to the States. So One Last Dance is about 2 performers who fall in love. But one gets accepted to a dance academy in London, and she has to move earlier than everyone else leaving for college. They decide to stay together in a long-distance relationship, so she moves to London, leaving the other guy back in the States. Sounds a little familiar, right? Samir had co-written this film with his friend Bieito de la Fuente, and Samir had told me that this film was partially inspired by my actual high school relationship with Selena Welling. But he'd made the characters dancers instead of actors, and, I was curious to see just how similar this film was to real life. Obviously, this was his work and his idea. My life was just a part of the inspiration behind certain plot points. Plus, every film basically takes on a life of its own due to how many different creatives are working on it. But this film was very impactful to me. It ended up being eerily similar to real life, because in the film, after Megan's character moves to London, she has a terrible accident. Andrea's character buys a plane ticket to fly to London to see her, but while driving to the airport, he gets a call from Megan's character's father, letting him know that she had died due to complications due to head trauma. Andrea's character hears this news and crashes while distracted on the road. The next time we see his character, he's in a wheelchair. Keep in mind that I would have a horrific life-changing accident in the winter of 2013, and this film was made in the summer of 2012, only about a year and a half beforehand. But there's no way he could have known what was coming. In his eyes, it was just good storytelling for one person to have a serious accident while the other was overseas. Pretty insane, right? I'll get to my accident later on, but that's why this film almost seemed to draw inspiration from the future as much as the past. When I watch it now, specific details like head trauma being the cause of death, a feline stuffed animal being in the film, and needing the wheelchair after the accident all gave me goosebumps. This was the first of at least 3 times that I became aware that the line between art and life isn't just thin, it can be invisible. And this was the least creepy of those 3 times, as you'll find out. Turns out that art imitates life, which in turn imitates art. I don't know. Fun fact that's not fun at all. That night, I got home and learned about the Dark Knight Massacre. About 12 hours prior, a man named James Holmes had walked into a movie theater that was screening The Dark Knight in Aurora, Colorado, and he'd managed to get a rifle, a shotgun, and a handgun into the theater. He shot 24 people, killing 12 of them. It shocked and terrified a lot of people, and I think it made us all a little more hesitant to go see the movie in theaters, and a little more thankful that we were still alive. But after a couple days of downtime, on July 23rd, I started my first day as a teacher's assistant, or TA, which I think is always a good option for recent graduates, and my primary job was helping the student directors edit their films. Because of this, I got to watch One Last Dance and the other films come together, and I actually ended up having a voiceover cameo that we recorded there at AMP Studios, where they were editing the films. I played the role of the father who calls and tells Andrea's character that his girlfriend is dead.
Angie suffered massive head trauma during dance practice. Yesterday, the doctors gave us the news that she passed away in her sleep. Sorry, son. She didn't make it.
Luckily, I've never had to make any sort of call like that in real life, but I think we took any death-related scene a little more seriously after the recent shooting, especially because I believe Samir and I had both been inspired by Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins to get into filmmaking in the first place. So to have this happen in a sequel film, I think was really impactful for both of us. Lesson 2. School projects can show you who's dedicated to their craft and career, and who isn't. I actually ended up being less of a teacher's assistant and more of a teacher because a few days later, Michael Buffo's wife Brittney went into labor and they had their first child. So while they were busy with family life, I had 13 days of overseeing the student director/editors who were finishing up the other 4 of the 5 short films produced that summer through HARA. So I definitely had my hands full. Let's get into those films. It's a Process was a story about loss written and directed by Rachel Carter, a returning HARA student and a friend of mine that I helped with her visual effects because they were actually similar to the effects that we'd used on Doppelgangers back in Season 1, Episode 6. So I already had some experience with the look she was trying to achieve of having a person fade out on screen, even though Aaron had been the one doing those VFX back then. Fun fact too! A few years later, when I was directing the feature film War of the Limelight, there was a scene in which students were watching a film in class and learning about it. And I was happy to use the VFX scene from It's a Process that Rachel and I had worked on all those years ago. But unfortunately, I believe the actress in that scene may have been a little insulted by the dialogue used in the movie, but we'll get to that later. The next film, Discovering Agent Taylor, was an action thriller written and directed by Mia Gustafson, a HARA student I'd been friends with since the very first season back when we shot Instructions Not Included. That was Season 1, Episode 2. On top of that, Megan Joplin was a co-star in that film as well, so it was cool to see how much both of their work had grown from when I'd first met them. Next Chapter was an experimental drama written and directed by Erica Lujan, a new HARA student who'd actually found out about the school because my dad, a jeweler, had brought it up to her mom while her mom was looking at jewelry in the store that my dad worked at. Erica's film was unique because it showed the events in a split-screen style that I'd never seen used in a film before. And that film featured Sitara Masilamani, who you'll recognize from Season 1, Episode 7 and Season 2, Episode 1. Love Letter was a drama written and directed by Ezra Lambert, another friend and longtime HARA student, and that film also featured Andrea Altomare, so I felt a personal connection to each film that I was overseeing. Technically, there was one more short film, I believe it was a proof of concept called Jane, but Michael Buffo was directing and editing that film himself with the intent to make it into a feature, so I wasn't as involved in that one. The previous summer, though, had only had 3 student directors, and this season had 5, so interest in the HARA Motion Picture Conservatory had definitely grown by then. I felt proud of my participation in HARA. I'd really given it my all to learn as much as I could while I was there, and I'd tried to give back as much as I could since I'd benefited from the program so much myself. I even recruited Rachel Carter, Samir Narain, and Bieito de la Fuente to work on some of the Carpe Diem scenes that we shot in the US. Speaking of Carpe Diem, when I wasn't working for HARA, I was busy logging the footage from the trip. This meant copying everything onto my new external hard drive, watching each clip, and putting it into a folder based on which country we shot it in and which scene it was meant for. But there were close to 300 gigabytes of 1080p footage, and a good part of it felt more like stock footage of the places we had visited along the way. So there was a ton to sort through and decide what we wanted to use. Fun fact 3. I also spent 3 days working on Crisis Remnants because Kellen Gibbs, the talented filmmaker from Season 1, Episode 10, was finishing the season finale. I spent 1 day in front of the camera and the other 2 days doing crew work to help him out, sometimes in the morning before I went in for my teacher's assistant job. And I was glad to be reconnecting with so many different filmmakers before I left for college, especially because my cell phone had been stolen overseas and I needed to collect as many phone numbers as I could if I wanted to keep in contact with any of these people. Fun fact 4. My friend Ammon Hardy spent most of that summer in Monterey County as well, which meant we had a good opportunity to shoot a scene with him while he was in town. I would have gone to the HARA Motion Picture Summer Wrap Party on July 27th, but Ammon's 18th birthday party was the same night, and that was more important to me, so I went to that party instead, which took place at another York School student's house, Roth. And that party gave us an opportunity to reconnect with some old friends and classmates after getting back from the trip. And Roth's mom was amazing and had a giant martini glass that they'd filled with ice cream, so we all attacked that with spoons as soon as she set it down. It also gave us a chance to talk about our plans to finish the film. Of course, Ammon immediately agreed when we told him about our decision to have Carpe Diem be a story told to his character. But you'll have to tune in next week to find out why the police tried to stop us when we were shooting Carpe Diem in Salinas.
On the dance academy. You got accepted? That's great.
I know.
So, this means you're going to London. When?
Well, see, school doesn't start for a while, and, well, my parents want to leave right away to get me settled in. I'm sorry. I mean, I know we had plans, and this isn't exactly...
No, look, you have to go. It's a great opportunity, and you worked really hard to get it.
Are you sure?
Look, we'll work it out.
All right, if you say so. But I've got some errands to run right now, so if you can stop by my house later and you can help me pack, all right?
All right, sounds good.
See ya.